Did you know that the word color can start arguments? Not because of what it means, but because of how it's spelled. In Britain, it's written as C-O-L-O-U-R, color. But in America, it's simply C-O-L-O-R, color. Same word, same meaning, same language. One missing letter. And this isn't the only example. The British write center, theater, honor, traveling, defense. Meanwhile, Americans write center, theater, honor, traveling, defense. So who's right? Did Americans simplify English? Or did the British make it more complicated? And why does the same language have two different ways of spelling the same words? To find the answer, we need to go back a few hundred years, long before spell check, long before dictionaries, and long before anyone agreed on how English should be written. Today we take spelling for granted. Most words have one accepted spelling, but English wasn't always like that. In fact, for centuries, English spelling was a complete mess. People often spelled words however they liked. You could find the same word written 3 or 4 different ways in the same book. There were no official rules, no standard dictionary, no spell-checking software reminding you that you've made a mistake. English was basically doing whatever it wanted, and surprisingly, nobody seemed too bothered by it. Then something important happened. Printing presses became widespread, books became more common, literacy increased, and suddenly people needed consistency. If everyone spelled words differently, communication became difficult. So publishers, teachers, and scholars started pushing for standard spellings. Slowly, English began settling down, but there was one problem. The English-speaking world was about to split in two. On one side, Britain, on the other, a young country called the United States. And that's where our story gets interesting, because one man decided English spelling needed a makeover. His name was Noah Webster. You may recognize the name from Webster's dictionaries, but Noah Webster wasn't just making dictionaries. He had a mission. He believed that the newly independent United States should have its own identity, its own culture, its own education system, and yes, its own spelling. Webster thought many English spellings were unnecessarily complicated, especially words influenced by French. Take the word color. Why keep the extra U? The word sounds exactly the same without it. So Webster proposed, color becomes color, honor becomes honor, labor becomes labor. The U was gone, simple, efficient, American. He made similar changes elsewhere. Center became center, theater became theater, meter became meter. Again, his reasoning was simple: spell words more closely to the way people actually use them. And because Webster's dictionaries became extremely influential in America, these spellings spread rapidly. Schools taught them, publishers adopted them, generations of Americans grew up believing these spellings were completely normal, because for them, they were. But here's the surprising part. The British didn't suddenly invent their spellings either. Many of the forms we now call British spellings already existed before Webster. In other words, Webster didn't create a completely new system. He simply chose one version and standardized it. Meanwhile, Britain standardized a different version, and over time, the gap became more noticeable. That's why today we have pairs like color and color, honor and honor, center and center, theater and theater, defense and defense, check and check, traveling and traveling. Neither side is wrong. They're simply following different standards. It's a bit like driving on opposite sides of the road. The rules are different, but both systems work, and sometimes the differences become surprisingly confusing. Imagine a British student writing an essay in an American university. Suddenly, every color becomes a spelling error, or an American submitting work in Britain and being told that color is incorrect. Both are technically correct, just not in the same place. And that's what makes English fascinating. It's often called a single language, but in reality it's a family of Englishes. British English, American English, Canadian English, Australian English, Indian English, and many others, each one carrying its own history, habits, and spelling traditions. The differences may seem small, a missing U here, a swapped ER there. But behind those tiny spelling changes lies a much bigger story, a story about independence, identity, education, printing, dictionaries, and one determined man who believed English could be improved. So, who changed English spelling? The answer is both simpler and stranger than most people expect. The British kept one set of conventions, the Americans standardized another, and over time both became correct. Which brings us back to our original question: color or color, center or center, theater or theater? The truth is, neither is more correct than the other. They're simply different versions of the same language, and that's one of the reasons English remains so fascinating. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Vocab Sense for more fascinating stories behind the English language, and tell me in the comments, which spelling do you prefer, color or color?